The ultimate weigh-in show. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOT. And this week we're going over UFC Vegas 42, headlined by a featherweight scrap between Max Holloway and Yair Rodriguez. It's been a long time since Yair stepped foot in the cage, and now he's coming back against one of the best to ever do it at 145 pounds. So I can't wait to see how that fight goes down. Obviously, heavy chalk on the Max Holloway side, but I feel like as long as this fight lasts, it should be entertaining nonetheless. So I'm really looking forward to that. Interesting other couple fights sprinkled throughout the card, 11 fights in total, not to mention early start time, 2 p.m. Eastern start time for the prelims, so don't get caught napping on that. And we also did have 2 weight misses this morning with Joel Alvarez and Liana Jojua that me and my guest will be going over and seeing if it has any impact on the fight itself. So without wasting too much more time, I do want to bring in my boy here. So the guest for this week is actually probably I'd consider him probably one of my best friends in the space. You know, since I started this journey back in 2016, 17, he's one of the first guys that I ran into, and he already had a little bit of an established foundation of guys and a following, and he was nice enough to kind of bring me along for the ride, and we really built up a solid rapport since then, and we're obviously business partners at this point in time as well with the Tape Index. So I'm bringing in my guy here, Adam Newsome. Newsome MMA, you guys know him from as well before he started up the MMA Play 365 as well. Adam, what's going on, brother?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for having me once again. I'd like to do it more often, to be honest, but, you know, life's busy, time zones. But when you asked me the other day, I thought, you know what, I'm doing nothing a Friday night. I've got myself a beer. There we go. Everything switched around differently on here. And I've had a curry as well, Manpreet, tonight, just to celebrate being on with my boys. So yeah, good times. Looking forward to breaking some fights down.
Let's go. If you guys have been watching the Ultimate Wayne show for the last couple months now, you guys remember Newsome did actually come onto the show, but that's when I was doing the 4-person panel, and this guy was like slugging through it for us in terms of, I think it was like 3 or 4 a.m. for him when we started the show or something, and he started off hot. We were talking about this before we went live, and then his energy level just went way down, and I don't blame him. The guy's on the other side of the world, and it's like middle of the night, and we're talking about, I didn't even think it was a huge card either. I think it was just a whatever card. So.
We had Bellator on in the background as well. Yes. I think that might have been the only thing that was keeping me awake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of why I started to go away from the whole 4-person panel thing. I'm not down for these 2.5-hour streams anymore. I've kind of already told the viewers and stuff that as well. And I think I really enjoyed it a little bit more when it's just one-on-one with me and my guest. Obviously, I'm in the hosting and analyst role here, but I do want to obviously extract as much information from my guest as possible. And we got a great guest for you guys, obviously, this week with my guy, Adam. So, before we even do the breakdowns, again, got to plug in the Tape Index since me and Newsome are pretty much like hand in hand with that. Make sure you guys check out the Tape Index. If I'm not mistaken, I actually have it in the description below. So make sure you guys go check that out. What I also have in the description below is Newsome's Twitter page as well. So if you guys want to go down there, click that. Hit my man with the follow as well, and check out his company over there at MMA Play 365 as well. They're revolutionizing the betting game as well. So I got to give him some big respect for that. All right, Newsome, let's not waste too much of our time. Let's get into this fucking card. First and foremost, we got Jung going up against Kennedy Nzechukwu. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus pretty much a pick 'em, right? Minus 120-ish, minus 115 for Jung. If you do see any favorite in this card on this fight, it is likely the Jung side, and he's going up against Nzechukwu, obviously the very slight dog. I'll actually let you kick this one off because I don't really have too many strong thoughts on this fight specifically, but I'll let you kick it off, and I'll try to add some a couple things on the outside. Who do you like here in this light heavyweight matchup?
Yeah, likewise with you. It's not something that's jumping off the page to me. I do think one thing though with Kennedy and Nzechukwu, I've sort of been high and low on him, and you know, there's been moments where I've been like, yeah, this dude's going to be good, and then, you know, I think the last time I bet Nzechukwu, I bet him at plus 110 against Darko Stosic, and you know, I was lucky that the referee did a phenomenal job there, and you know, lucky for the point deductions, because without that, I would have lost my bet. And that sort of got me a little bit lower on him. And one thing you can't take away from him, though, is in his last 2 fights, he's been down, he's been losing, and he's come back and he's taken all the damage, you know, the minutes losing the fight, and come back and managed to, you know, win his fights, and not only win the fights, but stop both opponents as well. Now, the thing is with Jung, I don't think he's going to go away anywhere. I don't think he's going to get finished by Kennedy and Nzechukwu. But I got to the point now where I just don't think you can ride Kennedy and Nzechukwu off in this fight, especially as an underdog. He's definitely going to have moments in this fight where he's going to be losing the fight. He's, in my opinion, he'll at least drop at least one round. But man, I'm actually picking Kennedy and Nzechukwu to win this fight. Again, Darren Jung, he's looked good in moments, but that fight against Sam Alves, I mean, at this point with Sam Alves, I love Sam Alves, so no disrespect to him, but at this point, if you are struggling against Sam Alves, and I don't know, it's not a good look. So yeah, I think Kennedy and Nzechukwu, I think he's got enough volume in there. He's got that grit. He'll stay in the fight. Even if he gets hurt or rocked or wobbled, he's likely going to come back and be able to put on some more volume and just carry himself through the fight. So yeah, the pick's Kennedy and Nzechukwu, but I do think it's going to be a close fight.
Yeah, apologies for Alfred losing his shit right now. Anytime somebody comes to the door, the guy just loses his shit a little bit. I should have warned you guys that I knew somebody was coming and I didn't give you guys the warning. I apologize. But yeah, I largely agree with a couple of the things that you say there in regards to, Kennedy always kind of coming back and always pulling off that comeback role here. Jung, a little bit sloppy at times when you're getting touched up by Sam Alves. Obviously not a good look. Personally, I want nothing to do with this fight, man. Like I have no confidence on either side that either guy will either, follow a game plan or be able to have a solid enough cardio to be able to impose a game plan over 15 minutes if that's what they choose to do, other than the fact that if they think they're going to go out there and just knock their opponent out within the first 10 minutes. I have, little confidence on either guy. I will say this. I do believe that Kennedy is still slightly green. Like I feel as though a lot of his wins are coming off of his athleticism and his durability and his ability to take some punches or damage at time. But like the skill wise, I kind of lean more so to the Da Un Jung side ever so slightly. I think he's the cleaner striker, a little bit more tight with his crisp combinations down the middle and all that. He does get hit as well. That is my concern. But this should be a slop fest if it goes past the 5 or 6 minute mark. I expect all the technical abilities to kind of just go out the window for both guys. I do lean the Jung side, but again, it's not to the point where I'm heavily invested in this fight either. So already some polar opposite takes here for me and Newsome in terms of who we think is going to actually win this fight. But then again, low level, light heavyweight fight kind of makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah, if either of these guys win, you're not going to be sat there shocked. You're also not going to be shocked if this fight goes to a decision and we're seeing a split decision and, everyone's on Twitter, oh, which way is this going to go? And then suddenly one judge scores it a 30-25. There's going to be no shocks with a close fight or if either guy wins. That's the way I see it.
Absolutely. And at least you guys across the pond don't have to stay up too late to watch a fight like this. So nice and early start for you guys.
I've been doing this for over 10 years, bro. It's nothing new.
Shout out to my guy Hunter Emster saying Alfred's on Kennedy as the dog. Makes absolute sense there. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got somebody that you're pretty familiar with, actually. Mark Diakiese going up against Rafael Alves. In terms of odds, we got -190 for Diakiese, +175 for Alves. And I'll kick this breakdown off. I do like Diakiese in this spot. After running the tape, there seems to be very small paths to victory for Rafael Alves in this fight. A lot of his win condition is kind of just predicated on him getting the finish, right? Like trying to drag guys to the ground, get his jiu-jitsu going, or try to nuke them with that big explosive power that he has. But I think that Diakiese is just a little bit too disciplined, a little bit too much of a veteran to kind of fall for something like that. I think we'll see him go back to kind of his leg kicking, calf kicking ways, something that was, very successful for him in that 2-fight winning streak he had before he ran into Rafael Fiziev, who, has the basis of a very good Muay Thai practitioner to be able to deal with a calf kick heavy game, which Diakiese was able to bring in there. So, not something to really hold your head about to have a loss to a guy like Fiziev for Diakiese. But I think that this is a great stylistic matchup for him. As long as he stays away from the early shots, early, power, I think he should be able to cruise here. I'm not 100% sure if he'll be able to finish Alves. I think that Alves, he's kind of had that narrative that he gasses out going late into fights. However, we saw a pretty good account of himself in that last fight against Damir Ismagulov, really pushing Ismagulov in that third round. So I'm interested to see if the gas tank, shows itself here against Diakiese, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think it was Diakiese kind of batter him from the outside and take home a decision victory. In terms of the scale, the guy looked phenomenal on scale, looked really good in my opinion. Probably one of the best we've ever seen him. And I look forward to seeing if he's able to translate that into a positive performance tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon, I should say. How do you feel about this specific matchup?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the nerves have kicked in already. You know, obviously we manage Mark at heavy duty, and man, like if you think of betting sweats, you know, getting sweats, watching your bet fight in the cage, it's a completely different nervous system when it's a fight that you manage, that you're close to, that you're friends with. And like I say, with Mark as well, we're going into business together. We're opening up a gym over in the UK. That's going to be one of the best facilities in the country once that's up and running. So yeah, the nerves are definitely there for me with Mark, but you know that's not nerves because of a lack of confidence in Mark. That's just general nerves. From a stylistic perspective, I know that Mark's had a good camp. I know that he's prepared. I know he's got a good game plan. I've had some input into the analysis as well. So obviously, I've taken Rafael Alves now numerous times. So I know that Mark's ready and prepared. And like I say, from a stylistic perspective, you know, even with bias aside, I think Mark's got a good stylistic fight ahead of him here. The one thing that he's got to be careful of, I said this in my own breakdown in my own podcast as well. Mark's got to be careful early on in this fight. He's got to mind his P's and Q's, and he can't sleep on Alves within that first 2.5 or 3 minutes. Alves comes out fast and hard like a ball, and like I say, Mark's durable. He can take damage, but you know you don't want to risk it. But then it comes back to Mark as a fighter, a technical striker, both offensively and defensively. I think he's sound. We saw his performance against Rafael Fiziev, which at the time a lot of people did. I think that was the breakout fight for Fiziev as well, which tells you everything you need to know about Mark.
Pretty solid favorite in that fight. I think minus 170-ish, minus 180 range.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think that was the fight where everyone was like, "Oh shit, Fiziev is actually really, really good." And like I say, that says everything you need to know about Mark. They got the fight of the night as well. So Mark's a good technical striker. I think he's got a lot of advantages in this fight. He's got the height, he's got the range, he's got the reach. He's got the speed advantage, movement advantage, cardio advantage. I think he can wrestle Alves as well. Maybe not try that early on with the guillotine threat. But again, if he's wrestling and his head's on the inside, then that's going to prevent Alves from wrapping up a guillotine. And also, I believe it's the left-hand side of Alves that he prefers the guillotine. So again, there's so many different ways that Mark can take this fight. And I actually disagree with you, Locke. I think that Mark can finish Alves in this fight. I think people forget that Mark hits like a fucking truck. Yeah. It's just we haven't seen it. And actually, I was watching something that I think it was John Gooden, a piece that John Gooden did. And I think it was Mark that was telling John Gooden that he's just been trying to figure out his style over the few years. Does he go into the fight as a striker or a wrestler? And I think that's where we didn't see that knockout power when he was looking to go in there and try and grapple his opponents. But again, something else that you mentioned back to the low kicks. I think the low kicks are definitely a weapon, especially early on. Alves leads really heavy on the lead leg. So in the early moments in this fight, as Alves is coming forward hard and aggressive, if Mark just snaps on that leg, on that calf, then that's not only going to halt Alves, but it's also going to hurt Alves. And it's also going to be just one in the bank. And when they come 2, 3, and 4 kicks, those bursts of aggressions and the explosions from Alves and the power behind his strikes, the more Mark kicks that leg, the easier and less complicated the fight becomes for him. Alves has got a path to victory in this fight by blasting Mark early on, just hitting him clean in the chin, which any man can drop to, or potentially jumping on a guillotine after that or something like that. But I think the path to victory for Alves is a finish, and I do believe it's a small window of opportunity because once we see 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes of this fight, I think Mark takes over there. Like I say, he's the more skilled fighter, better boxer, better kickboxer, better cardio, better speed, better movement. So yeah, I'm on Mark in this fight.
For anybody that fancies themselves those round 3 props, Diakiese currently sitting around plus 1,400 to get it done late if Alves' gas tank does fail him here. So just something to keep in mind there. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got the banger of a fight that everybody's looking for. Is Courtney Casey going up against Liana Jojua. In terms of odds, we got minus 240 for Casey, plus 200 the return on on Jojua. And the interesting thing about this fight, Jojua obviously missed weight by 2.5 pounds, which is not a good look at all. She was talking about all week how this is the weight class for her. This is the one that she should have been fighting at the entire time. And then she makes the cut down and she doesn't make it. So not a good look on her from there. She is obviously training over there at Cerro Longo every now and then. Like that's something that she's kind of like poking her head in with. But I don't know how much of an advantage it's really going to give her here, to be honest. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts about this one. And actually, I'll let you kick it off here. Again, KC minus 240. What are your thoughts on that in regards to this specific matchup? And then who do you think ends up winning?
My biggest thought is why Liana Jojua thought that a fight kit weighed 3 pounds. That's my biggest thought. Because
yeah, that was hilarious.
There was a bit of an issue with the stream as well from MMA Junkie.
Yes.
Shout out to them. And there was a bit of an issue. So she'd gone off, and then the stream sort of paused. And then when it came back on, they were getting a box out. I thought, oh, shit, who's missed weight now? And then it was her behind the box. You know, I'm sure everybody wished they were the box at that moment in time. But but why she went back to take her fight gear off, and man, yeah, it's funny. But from a fight perspective, I think I don't know what I think about the minus 240. I kind of think it's a bit nuts, but at the same time, I do believe Courtney Casey's got every advantage in this fight. Striking, maybe not a wrestling advantage, but jiu-jitsu topside. I think if any fighter does get on top, it is more likely to be Casey. She's got to be careful she won't get hardbarred from guard again, though. That's seems to be Jojua's go-to. But listen, if Jojua doesn't armbar her from bottom, I do find it tough to see her losing this fight, because Courtney Casey's a veteran. She's been around for years. She's fought all of the best girls in the division, and Jojua, I still believe, could make something of herself inside the UFC. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not massively confident in that. I'm not sure how long it would take her, but right now, I do think that Courtney Casey's the better fighter, battle-tested, a little bit smarter, again, apart from getting armbarred in guard. I think as long as she don't get armbarred in guard, she's probably going to win the fight. But, do you want to be laying minus 240 in this type of fight? No. The answer's no. So, yeah, Courtney Casey's the pick, but I suppose if you're forcing a bet on the money line, he's got to be the plus 195 of Jojua, but still, I don't think that's a great bet on that side either.
Yeah, I don't want to be holding a Casey or Courtney Casey ticket here and see her, just get laid on top of for 15 minutes, because we've definitely seen that in her past as well. She does have good jiu-jitsu, to get me wrong, but it seems like she just falls in love with it a little bit too much, thinking that she'd be able to catch somebody off her back. And she was able to catch, I believe, Mara Romero Barella a couple fights ago, if I'm not mistaken. But again, like, it's few and far between where we'll actually see it actually go down. So I'm not laying the money on Casey here. I do think she is the side, though, in terms of who should win this fight. From the betting side, obviously, you'd rather be on the dog, considering the level of competition that she's going up against with the favorite here. But I don't even know if I can trust Jojua either. Again, she didn't look the greatest on the scale either. I'm interested to see how that fares when it gets into the cage. And we might see Courtney Casey get another finish if Jojua's cardio and gas tank starts to fall off, similar to how her fight with Sarah Moras, when where Moras was able to get that finish in that third round. Again, Moras much bigger, much more imposing than what Courtney Casey brings to the table here. But again, the skill gap, I think, is just so wide that I think we'll see Casey still go out there and get the dub. Yeah, I want nothing to do with this fight, not even the over, because again, this could be one of those fights where we get that stupid weird finish, and then you're going to be kicking yourself for paying minus 220 on that over 2.5 as well. So just like the first fight of the night, I don't know about you, Newsome, but just like the first fight of the night, I want nothing to do with this. My DGen parlays, my Hail Mary parlays, all that shit, it will be without these two fights. This one for sure. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Sean Woodson going up against Colin Anglin. I'll kick this one off. The odds right now, plus 265 for Anglin, minus 325 on the favorite Sean Woodson. I think the odds are a little bit too wide in this fight. I'm not a huge guy on Anglin, but I do see his possible path to victory in this fight. Getting the fight to the ground, clinching Woodson up against the cage, just getting control time, right? Excuse me. At range, Woodson does his best work. Good output, good boxing combinations, very clean, crisp strikes from him. Obviously, with his boxing background, that's exactly what you would expect from him. And then, not to mention his lanky features for this division, obviously makes him a huge, always puts him at that size advantage over his opponents. Anglin, trains at the same training camp of Woodson's last opponent, Yusuf Zalal, the fellow Factory X guy here. I do think that they probably saw some things in that Zalal fight where they're like, okay, if we tweak or adjust a couple of things here, we could possibly find more success. So I think they have a bit of an advantage going up against Woodson back to back here, and they probably have a better fighter in Colin Anglin to be able to carry out those war orders to be able to take care of Woodson. I do think that Anglin could be slightly more competitive in the striking realms compared to what Zalal was bringing to the table there. But I think the end goal has got to be pin Woodson up against the cage, drag this guy to the ground. Woodson has given up tremendous amount of control time, but the reason he's winning his fights is once he gets back to distance, he does a good enough job with his output and his damage to kind of sway the judges back to his favor. But that Zalal fight was pretty close just based on control versus damage. And, if England's able to get maybe a minute more control in each round or something like that, maybe the round swings his way. So I don't really understand the minus 325 on Woodson and backing that with confidence, given that there are just small margins in some of his fights where if something went a certain way, like in terms of the control time, especially, he could possibly not get the judge's decision. So I took a shot on Anglin myself, plus 245, half unit shot there. I just feel like this is a good stylistic matchup and somebody that should be able to carry out this game plan pretty well. Even his decision prop, plus 500 for him to win by decision, I don't think is a bad spot either. But yeah, I can't back Woodson yet. I know he's talented. I know he has a ton of potential, but I think that this could be a matchup that could ruin his plans of getting a win streak back together here. Do you feel as strongly about the dog as I do here? And then obviously, what are your ultimate thoughts about this fight?
I don't feel as strongly as of the dog as what you do, but I do believe and I do agree that it's either Anglin or pass. If you're looking at a money line perspective, I do think Sean Woodson's going to win the fight, but again, I completely agree with you. I think minus 320 on Woodson could be nuts. And again, I said the same thing on my podcast as well. That the situation with this fight is if Anglin can't get this fight to the mat, Woodson is going to look like a minus 320 favourite, without a doubt, in my opinion. Of course, obviously, Anglin has got that puncher's chance, just like every MMA fighter has on the planet that's wearing 4-ounce gloves under the brightest lights of the sport. But I think if Woodson keeps this fight vertical, at least for 10 minutes, maybe 12 and a half minutes, then he will look like the minus 320 favourite. Well, that's a big if, because the problem is with this type of matchup, because Woodson's going to have a huge length, reach, range advantage over Anglin, and Woodson is also a boxer with straight punches. He knows how to use his range as well, which is really important because he's either all the way out, being able to strike in and hit because he's that long, or when he comes in, he comes all the way in inside the clinch, where these long, rangy guys are a nightmare to try and grapple with inside the clinch. So Woodson knows how to use his range. So that's actually a problem for him in this fight, because there's no way Anglin is just going to allow Woodson just to dominate him from the outside or get stuck inside the clinch constantly. At some point, Anglin is just going to think, fuck it, I'm not in this fight. And at that point, we're going to see the wrestling of Anglin, in my opinion. And that's where I think the betting line is not going to look accurate during the fight, because I do think Anglin is going to be able to get in on takedowns. I do think he's going to be able to score a couple of takedowns as well. I'm not sure how much top control time he's going to have before Woodson stands back up, and this is why I'm picking Woodson to win, because I do think there's going to be moments in this fight where you think Anglin, Anglin's in a good stylistic matchup, but then once the fight's back on the feet, I think Woodson's going to style on him. But like I say, Woodson's got the potential to look like a minus 320 favourite if he keeps the fight vertical, but I think there's going to be moments of wrestling which is going to make the minus 320 line look too wide, and therefore I do believe if you're going to bet on the money line, Anglin's the side, but from a pick perspective, I do think Sean Woodson's going to win, if that makes sense.
No, I completely understand. Like the control time is a big part of this, whether it's from being on top of Woodson or even pushing him up against the cage, because I don't necessarily think he needs to land multiple takedowns to win this fight. It's just trying to get that control time, pushing Woodson up against the cage and just kind of, making sure that he does a wizard to R to get out of those positions, or pivot to R, dig on hooks, whatever it may be. Just keep pummeling in there, stay inside and try to keep this at a close range fight, especially up against the cage. Got to believe that Anglin will have the advantage there.
A better way to look at this fight and just summarize what I mean by it is, if on Saturday night when I'm watching the fight, if Anglin ends up getting his arm raised at the end of the night, I'm not going to be surprised, which you should really be surprised if a minus 320 favourites losing. So that's sort of where I'm coming from with it.
Yeah, I completely understand. Personally, just had to take the shot on Anglin. I feel like the line is just a little bit too wide for me here, and I see the angle, right? All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Cynthia Calvillo going up against Andrea Lee. I'll actually let you kick this one off in terms of odds. We're getting minus 340-ish now for Cynthia, and then plus 120-ish is the return on Andrea Lee. How do you feel about this specific matchup?
Well, first off, the line flip is definitely something to talk about because Andrea Lee was the favourite when the lines were opened, and it wasn't until fight week that I think the line flipped from Calvillo. I I like the underdog here in Andrea Lee. I think she's got value on the plus 115, and again, it could be one of those fights that could either be really close or one fight is going to completely run away with it. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but that's just how I'm seeing it now. For Calvillo to win this fight, again, she's got to get takedown. She's got to get top control time because I think Andrea Lee is the better striker. I think she's the busier striker, the more dangerous striker. But the reason why I'm quite surprised in the line flip is because when you're looking at what I call the biggest gap in skill in the fight, the biggest gap in skill for Cynthia Calvillo to win the fight would have to be in the wrestling and jiu-jitsu, but I don't think it is. I think the biggest gap in skill in this fight is on the feet striking. And Calvillo could absolutely take Lee down and she could roll on it. She might be able to submit her as well. But I think the wrestling and grappling in this fight are the two closest elements between both fighters. The element that's furthest away, in my opinion, is the striking, which is on Andrea Lee's side. I think Andrea Lee's got the edge for sure. And top side, I actually think Andrea Lee's good top side as well in regards to ground and pound and submission hunting. I'm not saying that Calvillo's not great top side, she is, but again, I think if you envisage a scenario where either fighter is on top of their opponent, I think Andrea Lee does the better work on top. I think Calvillo's maybe more dangerous from a finish perspective, but Andrea Lee's got slightly more control time. Cynthia Calvillo will be transitioning, passing from position to position, which should give Andrea Lee opportunities to find some holes to escape or to stand back up to her feet. Like I say, I do think the fight's going to be really close. I think both women are going to have the moments in this fight. I don't think it's going to be a whitewash, but I do believe that Andrea Lee is just the biggest gap in skill is on the feet, and that's where Andrea Lee has the edge, in my opinion. So that's why I'm siding with the underdog in Andrea Lee.
It's funny because I feel like we have almost like polar opposites views on this specific matchup, because I do feel that Cynthia is pretty damn good on the ground. I think that she might be the best BJJ fighter that Lee has gone up against inside the UFC. Like, I know Roxanne Modafferi has some good work in terms of being able to control her opponents from on top. She's very heavy on top, which is why I thought she was successful in that fight against Andrea Lee. But I think that Cynthia could possibly be more crafty on the ground and be able to get those positions. And maybe, I know there are certain times where we've seen her kind of go submission over position, but there are certain times where we're seeing her get that dominant position and just maintain it and have that good top control and be able to work her opponents. I think she could do that to Lee here. In terms of striking, I agree with you. Obviously, Lee is a much better striker here, but I don't think it's by a margin where I think that Calvillo is going to be completely outgunned, where she could either get knocked out or lose a dominant 30-27 being outpointed on the feet. I just think that there's always going to be takedown opportunities available for her, because there are times where, Lee, we've seen it, she's been taken down in every single one of her UFC fights except the fight with Shevchenko last time around, right? She leaves openings to be taken down in terms of sometimes she just overcommits on combinations or she overcommits on a strike, and we see the counter from her opponent being a takedown. Like, I know the arguments out there for Montana De La Rosa landing 5 takedowns and getting almost no control time there, but I absolutely believe that Calvillo will get much more control time than what Montana was able to get on the ground, because Montana, decent wrestler, but not the greatest level of control unless it's against a girl like Nadia Kasim, of course. But like when she's fighting like legitimate competition, I think she struggles to kind of keep them down. Whereas Cynthia, we've seen her kind of ride women from on top and use her jiu-jitsu very well. And I truly believe she is one of the better jiu-jitsu girls in this division. And I think we'll see that skill gap once this fight hits the ground. So I did personally get in on Calvillo here, 2 units at minus 109. Obviously, the line has moved pretty much minus 130, minus 140 now for Calvillo. I thought, early in the week, I thought Calvillo should be a bigger favorite. Again, I don't know if I'm just have some sort of Calvillo bias, which I'm pretty sure I don't, because I bet against her against Katlyn Chookagian, which I thought was a better matchup for her, especially with Chookagian at plus 220 in that fight. But here against Lee, man, I just don't like the fact that Lee gives up as many takedowns as she does. And now she has probably one of the best BJJ specialists that she's going up against. Could get dicey. Like you said, I could see a possible submission for Calvillo as well. I'm going Calvillo decision. That's how I think she gets done, control time and takedowns, and nullifying the striking advantage that Lee will have. But yeah, I love this fight for Calvillo, to be honest. I'm looking forward to seeing it play out. If you are willing to share, have you pulled the trigger on Andrea Lee? Do you feel like that confidence?
No. I haven't. Okay. I think one of the reasons that I think one of the reasons why the lines are close and we've seen a flip and we're seeing contrasting opinions is I personally think both fighters are hard to trust. They're a little bit inconsistent. Like one fight, they can look like absolute world beaters, and then you bet them because they've looked like world beaters. Well, you bet them afterwards in the next fight, and then they go out there and they don't perform anything that you've watched on tape, and then it's sort of a couple of fights it's a little bit stagnant. Suddenly they'll go on another run of 1 or 2 wins where they're looking great, and I just feel it's one of those fights that's just one fighter. When you get 2 fighters like that are matching up against each other, I just find it a little bit harder to sort of put in the mix and sort of figure out or be confident in a result. But I think the fight's going to be close enough where the underdog is going to be live. That's all I'm saying with it.
It is hilarious because you are right, because there's so many like overreactions to their betting lines, specifically on the Calvillo side. And I pointed out earlier this week on Twitter, it's like she went minus 220 against what's her face, Carla Esparza, and then she loses that fight, and then her next fight she's a plus 150 dog against Poliana Botelho. Like, what's going on? Like, there's such an overcorrection, and I feel like there's a little bit of an overreaction here with Calvillo dropping her last couple fights and Lee having such a dominant victory in her last fight against Shevchenko. I feel like, again, I felt as though Cynthia should be a bigger favorite here, but given the recent track record, I kind of understand where it's at right now. But hopefully Calvillo gets her mind right, knows she needs takedowns in this fight, and goes after it. Because, again, I wouldn't trust her 100% if I knew this was going to be a 15-minute striking battle. I just don't see that happening here, though. Hopefully Calvillo is able to go out there, land some takedowns. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. This is actually the prelim headliner. I've seen a couple inklings on Twitter, and somebody even in the comment section said something about it. They've been pulling the odds for this fight on many bookies. Thiago Moises going up against Joel Alvarez. People are saying that they've been pulling the odds from certain fights. I'm not sure.
I'm looking at it now. So on best fight odds. Again, a lot of people won't know this. I look at it from a UK perspective. So I know that Caesars is William Hill. That's William Hill UK. That's been pulled. Bet365 is predominantly a UK book. That's been pulled. And actually 5 Dimes has pulled it. And REF, for those that don't know, on best fight odds is actually Bet Online. So Bet Online, 5 Dimes, Bet365 and Caesars William Hill have all pulled the odds, which is very strange. I've not noticed it until you just said them. Very, very odd.
I would assume maybe the weight miss, like they're just like maybe the fight's off, but they didn't pull the Jojua odds either, right? So that's kind of what's intriguing to me. So I've tried to message a couple guys that I know within the industry to see if they can figure out anything. As of this point, they say nothing's up. The fight's still on, so we don't need to worry about it. So we might as well give them our breakdown for as long as we believe that this fight's still on. Obviously, Thiago Moises minus 250 here. The return on Joel Alvarez plus 210. I really like the Thiago Moises side here. I feel as though this is a great stylistic matchup for him. Obviously, when you guys see the face-off here, Joel Alvarez is a towering lightweight who should probably go up to welterweight, because this is his second fight in the UFC that he's actually missed weight now. He weighed in the first time at 159.5 in the first fight that he missed to weight for. And then for today, this morning, he actually missed by 1.5 pounds, weighing in at 157.5. And the hilarious part about it is the guy immediately flexes on us like he thinks he made weight. Did not make weight, my brother. You don't get flex privileges if you miss weight. You stand there on the scale, embarrassed for yourself, and you move on. You don't flex on it. With that said, Yes, he is a towering lightweight, but I don't think that's going to cause Thiago Moises too much issues. Joel Alvarez, his striking style really seems to be one and done. Throws a couple of kicks out there, no real combinations or anything like that. It seems like he wants to kind of panic his opponents to get them to the ground, and then from there he pulls off a submission. In almost every single one of his fights, it's like a comeback kid kind of thing. He's usually down, and then he pulls off some sort of submission. If he submits Thiago Moises tomorrow, I might not log on to Twitter tomorrow. I'm just going to be honest, because I'd be surprised if he submits a guy like Thiago Moises, unless it's like a club and sub situation type of thing. I get it, but straight up, Thiago Moises on top of him, getting armbarred or something like that, not going to happen in my opinion. So I think there's a couple ways that Thiago Moises can win this fight. I think he can outpoint him on the feet if he's able to kind of close that distance and get his combinations going. I think he's a much better striker, a much more improved striker as well, as we've been seeing over his last couple of fights. And then if he chooses so, I think his least path of resistance here is going to be able to take this fight to the ground and grind out Joel Alvarez on top, because I don't think the takedown defense of Joel Alvarez is really there. I do think he's very high on himself from a jiu-jitsu standpoint, where he's going to be like, oh, yeah, sure. You want to take me down? I could probably submit you. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he's thinking here. But Thiago Moises, very decorated in the jiu-jitsu realm. And I understand this isn't jiu-jitsu, this is MMA, and Thiago Moises, in my opinion, has shown that he's still a very good jiu-jitsu player on the mat, even if punches and elbows are included in this fight. I like Moises a lot here. He is a part of the lock of the night play, obviously. I feel, again, stylistically, this is a great matchup for him. I'd be surprised if we see Joel Alvarez pull off some sort of comeback, just like he has in the majority of his fights. Like, just watch the Danilo Belluardo fight, right? Like, that's a perfect example. You can grind on this guy, but if you don't have the cardio, more than likely he'll be able to kind of reverse you and then take over from there, or pull off a submission. That's not going to happen to Moises. Moises has a tremendous amount of experience going 5 rounds on the regional scene. He's gone, a solid 3 in the UFC already. I'd be surprised if Moises loses this fight, man. I'm on Moises. I think Moises by decision is the way I'd go about it. How do you feel about this matchup?
Well, yeah, I mean, for start, I am sorry. At the start of that, I was just looking to see what I could find, and I do think that Alvarez has taken a 30% cut from his purse. So to me, it seems like the fight's still on, at least for now. In regards to the fight itself, I agree with you to an extent, but there are some things that I do disagree with, which I'll get into. I mean, when I first started looking into this fight, well, before I looked into it on tape, I was in the betting line and thinking, man, Joel Alvarez is live in this spot. But the more I watched tape, the more I thought, actually, he's not as live as what I thought, to the point where I don't think he's going to win the fight. So the one thing that I do agree with you is that Thiago Moises is going to win this fight. I do think he's the better fighter. I think where Joel Alvarez is most dangerous, Moises definitely has the ability to nullify that. He's a legitimate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. The parts where I slightly disagree with you, Manpreet, is I actually wouldn't be shocked, and I know it might sound crazy, but I actually wouldn't be shocked if Alvarez submitted Moises. Now, if Moises can get the takedown, get the fight settled, and even if he's in guard when the fight is settled and everything's calmed down, scrambles have stopped, I think at that point Alvarez ain't going to be submitting Thiago Moises. But I think in an initial takedown, in a scramble scenario, if both fights, if Joel Alvarez goes for a trip and Moises tries to reverse it, they both fall into the ground and they're about to hit a scramble scenario, I think in those moments, I think Alvarez is live to snap an armbar, snap a triangle on really, really quickly, because he's got the long limbs that it's not going to take so much effort for him to quickly lock that up. But outside of that flash submission, if you like, we talk about flash knockouts a lot. I would call that a flash submission. Outside of a flash submission, yeah, I do see it difficult. I do see a difficult time for Joel Alvarez. I actually think his best path to victory for him taking this fight to Moises, I don't think he's going to be able to take Moises down. But I think Alvarez's best path to victory is to try and keep this on the feet, use his range. He's aggressive, and again, another slight thing that I disagree with you saying, if you go back and watch the Belluardo fight, I agree with how you analyse that fight, but I think Joel Alvarez is showing improvements from fight to fight as well. He's still a young kid, and in my eyes, he's getting better from fight to fight. Against Duffy, his striking looked better. He looked more powerful, more aggressive. I think actually that's where his best chance to beat Moises is. But you look at Moises against Alexander Hernandez. I know you bet Hernandez, I bet Hernandez. We all bet Hernandez. But Moises' striking developed himself as well. You can't ignore that. And, I'm not going to be biased on one side and say one guy's developing and not another. I think Moises' striking has developed to a point where I do think, again, that can be nullified. And it's all about these nullified situations for Moises. If he can nullify the striking or get an edge in the striking in this fight, I think he's got the wrestling advantage, which means that once the fight's settled on the mat, I do think he's got a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu advantage. That's why I am picking Moises to win the fight, but I wouldn't be shocked, again, to see Joel Alvarez just snap something up really quick and submit Moises in a split moment. Like I say, this isn't Jiu-Jitsu, it's MMA. In a split moment, I don't think that would be surprising, even though Moises is a legitimate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. What would be surprising is Moises has him settled on the mat, he's going to work, and then he gets caught by something that to me seems crazy. So yeah, outside of a flash submission or maybe a flash knockout with the puncher's chance, yeah, I've got Moises as well.
You're giving me flashbacks of like a prime T City type of submission from Joel Alvarez here, because he's really good in those scrambling situations where he's kind of able to lock on to that neck and take home that guillotine or that triangle choke or something like that. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from like how you see the submission pull it off. And I don't necessarily disagree. The way that I said I think he would be able to get the submission as a club and sub type of situation, but again, flash submission is a solid look there as well. And last thing I'll say about this matchup, and then we can move on. In regards to his developing striking, I feel it's more so his development in terms of being aggressive, because in those fights against Joe Duffy and Yakovlev, he's just ripping leg kicks, and it feels like he was just trying to get that desperation takedown out of both of these guys. And once that desperation takedown came, he goes, "Oh, you're giving me your neck, and I'm taking that home because you're worried about your leg right now while I'm chewing that up, but I'm going for your neck. That's what I'm actually trying to go for." So I thought that was a great approach from him in those fights. I'd be surprised if he, goats Thiago Moises into a desperation takedown and catches him with something like that as well. So, we should be able to find out a lot here about both guys.
The biggest problem with Joel Alvarez for me is he's a guard player, and like it's really hard to lay money on a guard player because when they're taken down, they're going to be trying for submissions, and even if Joel Alvarez has got submissions off his back previously, the better level of competition he faces in the UFC, the harder those submissions are going to be coming off your back. And that's, again, that's a big advantage for Moises because Joel Alvarez trusts in himself too much. He becomes a guard player, and then suddenly he's 2 minutes down, 2.5 minutes down on his back, and he's not finding a way back up, and then Moises will be smothering him. So that's definitely another solid path to victory for Moises, just because, like I say, Alvarez is a guard player. I personally don't like that style in the UFC.
I like it. Shout out to all the Justins we have in the live chat. I see that as well, guys. There's so many different Justins. I'm not sure what's going on today, but shout out to you guys. All right. We are moving right on to the main card, and this is the time that I always like to remind you guys. Make sure you guys hit that like and hit that subscribe, and then show my guest some love as well. Newsome's Twitter handle is in the description below. Make sure you guys go check that out. Shoot him with a follow. One of the sharper guys that I know as well. And then obviously go over there and show some love to the MMA Play 365 website. And most importantly, if you don't already have the tape index, get your ass on that tape index because trust me, you're going to enjoy it. All right.
Are you a real handicapper if you don't subscribe to the tape index?
Exactly. Exactly. You living in the Stone Ages looking for your own tape and shit, guys. Come on. Shout out to the tape index. All right. Next up, main card. Song Yadong going up against Julio Arce. In terms of odds, we're currently looking at minus 140-ish for Song Yadong and plus 120-ish return on Arce. I'll actually let you kick this one off, brother. How do you feel about this matchup between these fun bantamweights, right? This should be a great fight.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more anticipated fights on the card. On a card, by the way, that I believe is going to be fun from top to bottom. But I'm actually going to go back to a fight that you spoke about because I've got similar vibes to what you said with the previous fight as I have on this fight. So with something you said in the Cynthia Calvillo and Andrea Lee fight is you said you feel that, I can't remember the exact wording, but maybe you're thinking that you might be missing something because you're so confident yet the lines are so close. I feel exactly the same about Song Yadong in this fight. I think this is a really good matchup for Song Yadong. I think it's a stylistic nightmare for Julio Arce, and I actually love both fighters. Both fighters are good in their own ways. Both world-class fighters as well, in my opinion. But as the old saying goes, styles make fights. And the thing is with Julio Arce, every single fight where he's fighting somebody that is predominantly a striker, Julio Arce just absorbs pressure, which forces him backwards. He's on the back foot, and luckily for Arce, he can strike better than most. Fighting backwards, a lot of fighters struggle to fight backwards. They're much better on the front foot. Luckily for Arce, he can fight moving backwards, but I still think he's nowhere near as effective as he is moving forwards. And the thing is, with Song Yadong, he's going to eat up that forward pressure invitation all day long. And he's slick with his movement in and out of the pocket. He's got good combinations. He's got power in his hands, knockout power. And when you're looking at this fight, if Julio Arce is constant on the back foot, Song's moving forwards, he's going to land a ton of volume as well. Like I said, I like Arce, but it's to the point where I think Arce's best path to victory is actually exactly what he did against Shaman Moraes. Try and tie up in the clinch against the cage, try and sneak around the back, hop on the back and stay on the back looking for a submission, because I don't know, I just feel outside of that, Song Yadong is the better striker. I don't think Arce is going to be shooting takedowns, and if he does, I think Song Yadong's wrestling defense is very sketchy, by the way, but only against a solid wrestler. I think Arce isn't a Cody Stamann, for example. He isn't a Kyler Phillips that's just going to be able to take him down at will. I think the fight is predominantly going to be won and lost on the feet. I think that potential best path to victory for Arce in regards to just hopping onto a back or hopping onto a good position and holding him down is a low percentage outcome. I think it's Song Yadong's fight to lose, but like I say, with you and what you mentioned with Calvillo, I'm sort of there with Song Yadong. I'm really surprised because before fight week, Song Yadong was minus 155 to minus 165, and at that point, I'm thinking, well, fuck, this is going to go to minus 200, and I'd understand it, but it's come all the way back down. So, like I say, I'm sort of in that realm that you were in with Calvillo. Like, is there something I'm missing here? Because stylistically, it looks like a bad fight for Arce.
Yeah, it usually doesn't play out that like there's been a couple of times where I'm just like, why are the odds not wider? And the last time I can remember actually legitimately saying that was Alexander Hernandez versus Thiago Moises, right? And we fucking find out what happened there. So hopefully that's not the situation this weekend. But going into taping this fight, I really thought I'd be on the Arce side because one, he was the underdog, and I thought he was the better striker, like technically speaking. However, once you run the tape, then pretty much everything you just said, right? Like he's always kind of being the one that's backed up. He doesn't play the matador role that well. And I think he's going to get bullied a lot here by a guy like Song Yadong, who just moves forward and throws big shots. I was very impressed with Yadong in his last fight against Casey Kenny, who I thought would have tremendous wrestling success against him and kind of be ahead of him, a step ahead of him in the scrabbling situations. But Song just shut that shit down, man. He did a really good job in terms of just establishing his striking style and kind of keeping Kenny off of him in that fight. So good work from Song there. I just don't know if Arce is going to be able to be the guy that has that grappling success that you, like you said, guys like Cody Stamann have had in the past. Those guys are much, much better wrestlers, right? Yeah, I really think that Arce needs to engage in the grappling here in the clinch, be successful with takedowns to have any success in this fight, because otherwise he's just going to be on his back foot, and optically speaking, does not look good to the judges. I think that the judges will favor that forward movement of Song Yadong in this spot. So we've seen Song even get, questionable decisions in the past, considering his fighting style, which is, again, optically very pleasing for the judges. And I'm expecting that here against Julio Arce as well. So I haven't pulled the trigger myself on Song. The line movement has been a little bit wonky, like you kind of referred to. But I do like Song here. I don't know if he finishes Arce, though. I doubt he finishes Arce. I think this goes the full 15 minutes, and I'll be on the Song side here as well. So I am in agreement with you in regards to that. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Miguel Baeza going up against Chaos Williams. In terms of odds, we got minus 140 for Baeza and plus 120 the return here on Chaos Williams. And now Baeza has probably been one of my favorite prospects to watch. He did take his first ever loss in his last fight against Santiago Ponzinibbio, had a great first round, and then Ponzinibbio, being the wily veteran that he is, was managing to adjust in the second and third rounds, and he was able to take home those two and get the judge's decision there. But up until that point, the only real flaw that we saw in Baeza's game was that one time that he got rocked by Matt Brown, and everybody was just shouting from the mountaintops that he's going to get knocked out by Ponzinibbio. I will say this: Chaos Williams has struck a little bit of fear inside of me ever since he's been starting some of the dudes that he's been going up against inside the UFC, because I never really thought he was a great fighter, man. He was just all raw athleticism, power. That's pretty much what got him to the dance, in my opinion. But once he starts facing legitimate guys, I thought he was going to start to falter. Obviously, Pereira was able to get him out of there. I was impressed with this 15-minute performance against Samuelsberger, because I thought Samuelsberger was kind of live in that situation. But now this is by far the best fighter he's ever fought in Miguel Baeza. Great striker. Calf kicks similar to your guy, Mark Diakiese. He really likes to throw them out there and kind of immobilize his opponents. And then something that we saw in the Takashi Sato fight, really good jiu-jitsu as well, right? He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but he just doesn't flex it that often because his striking is so good. So my concern here, though, is if he does get countered perfectly by Chaos Williams, he's probably going to go out. But again, that's a very low percentage thing compared to Baeza being able to win 99% of this fight, which is what I think it's going to look like. I'm hoping that we get, the smart and savvy Baeza. Play it safe in the first couple minutes here. Get your leg kicks out there, try to immobilize and try to, get that power out of Chaos. And then maybe in the second round or so, start getting some takedowns, because I think he can wrap that neck up pretty easily here, as I think he's much, much better on the ground. So the spot that I actually took in this fight, because I think both guys are capable of getting the finish, I went with the under 2.5. I got a 1.25 units at minus 125 to win 1 unit on the under 2.5. I do think that we'll see violence in this fight. There is the possibility that Baeza plays it very safe and just wins a decision in this spot, which I'd be okay with losing a unit 0.25. But if I'm expecting this fight to go the way it is in my head, is, Chaos will likely swing and miss a lot early in this fight. He's going to start to tire a little bit. I do think he'll start to swing and miss even more in the second and third round, which is where Baeza should be able to either take advantage with his superior striking, his superior cardio, and his superior grappling and jiu-jitsu. And hopefully he'll be able to wrap up that neck and bring it on home, because he is a finisher too, man. Like, people quickly forget that he can go out there and finish fights. And I think he should be able to hand Chaos Williams his first ever finish here. So I like Baeza by finish. The submission prop is around plus 600. The last time I checked, I'd take a little bit of a sprinkle on that, but I do think that Baeza gets him out of there within 2 rounds. How do you feel about this matchup, brother?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just in reflection to something you said, I actually want to give props to Chaos Williams, because just like you, when I was watching tape on his debut, which I believe was Alex Morono in the UFC, yeah, the dude did not look that good outside of the UFC. Looked like he had a ton of holes, cardio issues. He really didn't look that good. But actually, you look at him now, and he's a much more calm and composed fighter, and he does have some technique about him as well. But the bottom line with Chaos Williams is he is about that power. He is about knocking his opponents out. If he doesn't get that knockout, then he's always going to struggle to win fights, because his opponent will always be able to capitalize on Chaos Williams. Not so much slowing down later in fights, although he does slow down a little bit, but just the power seems to go the longer the fight goes on. So if Chaos Williams doesn't find a knockout, he is going to struggle to win some fights on the scorecards. And I think this is one of those fights, because I don't think Baeza is going to be losing a technical striking battle to Chaos Williams. Chaos Williams ain't going to be coming in with a wrestling heavy approach and getting a lot of top control time. So it is really just a puncher's chance for Chaos Williams. It is an elevated puncher's chance because he hits hard, but ultimately I do think it's a low percentage outcome. And again, you touched upon it, similar to Mark, with how I described the low kicks, just hitting hard and taking away that movement, halting the forward pressure, which then reduces the power because they can't plant on the lead foot as well. Those low kicks from Baeza are something else. Like, they are vicious. And it's going to take somebody like Ponzinibbio, which, by the way, I've spoken to fighters that have trained with Ponzinibbio, and they've described him as hard. That's pretty much it. Just the dude is solid to hit. He's solid to look at. He's just hard. So it doesn't surprise me that Baeza couldn't put that final nail in the coffin in regards to the low kicks on Ponzinibbio, because he was so tough. We saw in Chaos Williams' last fight against Matt Semmelsberger. Semmelsberger hurt that leg in the 3rd round. Chaos Williams was switching stances. And listen, Baeza comes into this fight and his first 3 or 4 or 5 strikes are low kicks like it was against Ponzinibbio. The fight could be over that quickly, because I don't think Chaos Williams' leg is going to survive that long. But this is the thing with Baeza. I think that he's got a technical striking advantage. I think he's got a huge advantage with the low kicks. And listen, even if he doesn't want anything to do with the striking, he could just take Chaos Williams down, who's got questionable takedown defense. And listen, we saw what Baeza did to Takashi Sato on the mat. You know, the initial wrestling shot wasn't that great from Baeza, but he stayed with it. He adjusted his grip. He got Sato down, and from there it was just like a hot knife through butter. And that's where we really saw how good Baeza's black belt is. I think if this fight hits the mat, he's going to get Chaos Williams out of there. I think if it doesn't hit the mat and it stays on the feet, I think he's going to be able to get Chaos Williams out of there. Again, similar to Mark and the Rafael Alves fight, Baeza's just got to mind his P's and Q's early in this fight, not do anything stupid, stay smart. You mentioned it as well, Manpreet, in regards to keeping high fight IQ. Baeza, for a young kid, has got extremely good fight IQ. You can see that. He doesn't overexert. He doesn't get excited. And yeah, I love him as a fighter. I love him as a prospect. The only time I tried to fade him was against Matt Brown at plus 175. That close. But yeah, I like Baeza. I think he's got multiple paths to victory. Chaos Williams' path to victory is live, but only for a small amount of time. So yeah, the pick's Miguel Baeza.
The reason I was very low on Chaos coming into it, like the regional tape was not good, but man, his striking just so wild and reckless, and he was getting away with it because he has so much power. I'm like, once he fights somebody that knows how to throw straight punches down the middle, he's likely going to get sat on his butt or put out. And I thought Abdul Razak Al Hassan was going to be that guy, which is why I took Razak in that fight. But we saw what happened. One lazy leg kick, and you're staring up at the lights, and that's the type of power that Chaos carries. So that yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how he responds, fighting a much more technical fighter here in Baeza, and seeing how that one goes out.
The other side to this as well is you look at the trajectory of both fighters. In my opinion, I think Chaos Williams has got a huge step up in competition here from a skill set perspective, because it's very clear. Even though Baeza lacks experience to an extent, even though he's just been in there with Ponzinibbio, that's the sort of counter argument to that. But a sort of bigger sample size of experience. Even though he lacks that, you can see from a skill set perspective that this is a step up in competition for Chaos Williams. But for Baeza, coming off a close fight with Ponzinibbio, one that we all thought he was going to win after round one, this is a step down in competition for Baeza. So they're meeting at the right point. And like I say, I don't think Chaos Williams is at that level to beat Baeza thoroughly in regards to, you know, beating him convincingly outside of just that one knockout shot. And listen, again, on Saturday night, if we watch this fight and Baeza ends up face first on the canvas or looking up at the lights, you know, we're not going to be surprised, because that's the path to victory for Chaos Williams. But it's a puncher's chance, bit of an elevated one with a small window of opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. And I can't believe we go from Baeza and Williams to Felicia Spencer and Leah Letson. In terms of odds, we're looking at -3, actually, yeah, close to -300 for Felicia and plus 260-ish is return on Leah Letson. I'll actually let you kick this one off, brother. Do you have any strong thoughts about this fight? Do you think Felicia deserves to be -300? And then how do you see this fight playing out?
Yeah, I think the hot take is I completely agree with Felicia Spencer as a -310 favorite. Does it entice a bet? You know, probably not, but I completely understand it. I mean, Leah Letson striking is where her bread and butter seems to be, but I don't think it's striking that Felicia Spencer should really be fearing. I mean, Felicia Spencer's been in there with the beasts of the beasts in that division, you know. So I don't think Leah Letson's going to provide something from a striking perspective that is going to trouble Spencer enough, or be something that Spencer hasn't seen before and better. So I'm not saying Spencer is a great striker, but I just don't see a huge edge in the striking here. And listen, if Letson does prove me wrong here and the striking looks completely improved and sharp and crisp and on point, then Spencer's just going to use a physicality, close the distance, and get Leah Letson down to the mat, which is where Spencer's going to be the better fighter, the better grappler. You know, she's going to give herself submission opportunities. She's going to get top control time. I feel that this fight, in a 15-minute kickboxing fight, I don't think this fight is. I don't think Leah Letson's like, oh my God, she definitely wins. So I think the striking's close, but then the grappling and the wrestling and the BJJ grappling edge for Spencer, I think, is great. easily the biggest gap in skill in this fight. I think Spencer's going to be able to find takedowns again. I think it's one of those fights where Leah Letson has got a huge step up in competition here, and Spencer's got a huge step down in competition. I think we're going to see the levels here. So yeah, I'm picking Felicia Spencer.
It's hilarious that you say hot take and then come out with that, and I got the hot take, and I'm taking the Leah Letson side of things here.
No, mine's not great.
No, I completely understand what you're saying, because I do believe that, yes, if Spencer is successfully able to ground this fight and she can successfully control that top pressure, she could possibly even find a finish. I think that's how much of a skill gap there is potentially on the ground here. However, after running the tape, man, there are things from Letson's game that I feel as though could give Spencer some trouble in terms of the striking specifically, right? Felicia's not a great striker, in my opinion. From what I've seen from Letson, I feel like she could, put volume together, get some output, have some good footwork, stay out of try to stay away from the grappling as best as she can, right? I know a lot of people are giving Spencer some issues in terms of not even shooting one takedown against Norma Dumont in the last fight, and that's probably why they're on the Letson side here. But it's not like Felicia didn't try, right? She has 0 takedown attempts in terms of statistics, but if you guys watch the fight, she's trying to close the distance, she's trying to get close to Dumont. Dumont sees it coming from a mile away, and she's able to kind of pivot off, redirect Spencer into the cage, and then she circles back and gets to the middle of the cage. Her takedowns are sketchy, to say the least, right? She's able to get these women to the ground because she's just so much better than some of these women, right? The Zara Farrens, the Megan Andersons, right? She's able to get those girls to the ground because their takedown defense is obviously piss poor. And those women seem to just accept their back on the mat. Compared to Leah Letson, every single fight that I've seen, when she does get taken down, she works immediately right back to her feet. She doesn't settle on bottom at all. It's almost like I am not settling on my back whatsoever here. And she always gets back to her feet and then gets back to that volume and that output, which I think will be the kind of deciding factor here against Spencer. So the longer she's able to keep in the striking, there's no way she looks like plus 285 or plus 250. I took the shot, half unit shot, plus 286 on Letson here, because if she is able to keep this fight on the feet, I think she does a much better job in terms of getting the judges to see that she's going to be the one winning the striking exchanges. Again, output, volume, again, hopefully staying away from the takedowns. That's the biggest concern, because this is one of those spots where I'm betting one side, but I am predicting the other side as well, because I do think that if Spencer is able to get this fight to the ground and establish that top position, it won't be long before she's able to get her out of there. However, everything I've seen from the Letson side of things, she gets back to her feet, and that's what I'm leaning on. With that said, huge level of competition jump here for Letson as well, considering she's been fighting the Julia Stolyarenkos of the world and now going up against a girl like Felicia Spencer, who, again, I just have too many question marks, especially with her being a minus 300 favorite in this spot. So I did take a shot on Letson. Is she finishing her? Hell no, she's not finishing her. Cyborg went 15 minutes with this chick. Nunes went 25 minutes with this chick and was not able to get a finish. So if you want to get a little bit more, juice for that squeeze, maybe even taking Letson by decision, which I think sits around plus 400, plus 450, wouldn't be a bad stab either. So I'm not supporting Felicia at minus 300 here. I like Letson. I do think she'll get the decision victory here. Again, it's all about keeping the fight upright. Last thing that we obviously need to address regarding this fight, 3-year layoff for Leah Letson. She had a ton of health issues that she was dealing with, her thyroid and all this type of stuff. There's a ton of things that were wrong with her. Luckily, she was able to get with a specialist, and they were able to kind of help her out. And now she looks in much better shape than what we were seeing from her Ultimate Fighter days. And when she went up against Julia Stolyarenko, you could see a clear difference in terms of her physique. So I'm interested to see how that plays out inside the cage as well, because if she can move well, pivot off, and kind of take the normal Dumont type of thing, where she's you can see the takedown coming from a mile away, pivot off and try to get away, I think she'll have tremendous amount of success. I don't rate Spencer striking much at all, to be honest, man. I think she needs to get fights to the ground to have success, and that's obviously what we've been seeing over the majority of her career. Last stat I'll throw out about this fight, and then we'll move on to the next one. Felicia Spencer is holding a 10% takedown accuracy rate, but you can't take MMA stats, for face value. Let's look into it a little bit more. She went 0 of 15 against Nunes and Cyborg combined. So I'm sure her takedown defense or takedown accuracy is a lot better if she's just fighting women that are not Nunes and Cyborg. So
it's a little like Alexander Volkov's takedown defense prior to the Tabora fight. Now I think he's probably rectified some of that. But Alexander Volkov's takedown takedown defense percentage was just so fucked because of the Blades fight. Singular or in Spencer's case, double fights against top level competition can sort of skew those a little bit. But you look at Volkov's takedown defense out. Aside from the Blades fight, it's actually probably one of the best in the UFC. So yeah, I do agree with what you've just said.
Remember, folks, prediction is Spencer. But I think from a betting perspective, I got to take a bit of a shot on Letson because I could see her path to victory here as well. So don't crucify me come fucking Sunday when, if Felicia Spencer gets her out of there within 2 minutes with landing a takedown. Just saying. All right, let's move on to the co-main event here. We move on from the women's featherweight division to the men's heavyweight division. We got Ben Rothwell tipping the scales at 265.5 pounds, going up against Marcos Rogerio de Lima, former light heavyweight from a couple years ago, now tipping the scales at 259 pounds. We got some big boys in the cage this weekend, Newsome. I will obviously start this off in terms of odds. We got minus 155 for Rothwell, plus 135 the return on de Lima. I hope people aren't putting too much stock in de Lima's fight against Maurice Green, because I probably could have taken down that rendition of Green that we got that night. It was 14 minutes and 5 seconds of control time that de Lima was able to accrue against Maurice Green in a 15-minute fight. I don't know what Green was thinking. Every single round made the same exact mistake. The guy overthrows on his punches, stepped through a little bit too long, and de Lima was able to counter with a beautifully timed takedown to drag the fight to the ground and then control him from there. I think he's going to struggle here to kind of to get Rothwell to the ground. And then from there, I think that we'll see Rothwell kind of start to open up and use his striking a little bit more, maybe even try to extract a desperation takedown from de Lima and then lock up one of his patented front chokes that he's been able to get with so many fighters in the past. I do think the first round could be dangerous for Rothwell. De Lima is a banshee in that first round, has great leg kicks, has some tremendous power as well. Let's give him his credit where it's due. But if he thinks he's going to go out there and do what he did against Maurice Green, I think he's sadly mistaken. For years, Rothwell, it's been difficult to take the guy down. He's given up a couple takedowns in his last couple fights, Marcin Tybura, but that was after, a solid MMA showcase from Tybura. Good striking, good footwork, good movement, and then waited a little bit later and eventually got those takedowns later in the fight. But historically speaking, it's kind of been a little bit difficult to get a guy like Rothwell down to the ground. And I think a guy like de Lima will likely struggle the longer that this fight goes. So you could take this from a live betting perspective, wait to the end of round one and then take some Rothwell, because I believe if, the strongest round from de Lima will be round one, he'll likely win that round. And then we could possibly get some plus money on Rothwell going into round two. But I just don't see that happening. I do think we see Rothwell survive early and then put him on him late. I like Rothwell. Rothwell by sub as well is a decent spot, but even Rothwell inside the distance around plus 190 piques my interest. So I like Rothwell here. I know he's 40 years old. I know he hasn't been looking the greatest recently. However, Marcos Rogerio de Lima, this is the type of guy that Ben Rothwell beats personally. You able to give more credence to the de Lima side? Because I've seen some strong opinions about him, but I just don't see it happening this week. And I got Rothwell. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I think this is another fight we're going to be dissenting on as well. I think de Lima's live in this fight for sure. I think the one area that people are overanalyzing, and you touched upon it, is the Maurice Green thing, because de Lima isn't going to do to Rothwell what he did to Maurice Green, and also I think that's the most dangerous path to victory for de Lima. Again, you touched upon it. If he starts shooting takedowns, Rothwell has been known for that patented front choke where he's choked out some top UFC heavyweights in the past, and this is actually a danger for de Lima because his weaknesses are actually from a defensive jiu-jitsu perspective, from a defensive wrestling perspective. De Lima's actually a striker. He's a Muay Thai based striker. It's the wrestling and the grappling is something that he added to his game and developed along the way, and has worked on more recently against someone like Green. That's going to work great on him. But de Lima has problems against fighters that are trying to wrestle him, that are trying to grapple him. That's where we've seen him crumble. And Rothwell isn't going to do that. Rothwell isn't going to come in there and start shooting takedowns. If he does, listen, I'll be shocked. But I think that de Lima in this fight, I don't think he's any sort of volume king. Just unlike the fighter that we're about to talk in the next fight, he's not some volume king. I don't think he's going to put out a tremendous amount of volume. But what I do think he's going to put out more volume than Rothwell. Rothwell's dangerous. He hits hard. He's big. but he's really unorthodox in his movements. His movement's not quite there, and I've bet Rothwell before in this latest run since he came back. So he was away from the sport for a few years, and he came back. I bet him against, I think it was Ivanov. I thought Rothwell won that fight, if I'm being honest. But whilst I watched Ben Rothwell, I'm like, come on, Ben, more volume, more movement. Stop stalling, stop, be more active. And he just isn't. But I think De Lima is going to be more active. De Lima's got a solid low calf kick. So if the movement of Rothwell is already a little bit, hit and miss, the low calf kicks are definitely going to add to that. It'll also add to the volume again. And I think De Lima's actually a solid kickboxer. It's just we don't really get to see it too often because he gets matched up with a lot of these wrestlers or grappling heavy fighters. Apart from his last fight, it was his last fight where his opponent was so bad in those areas that De Lima was able to exploit them himself. It's very rare that we see De Lima in a striker versus striker fight. I actually think he's a decent striker. I think he's, like I say, he's a Muay Thai based striker. I don't think he's going to set the world alight. I definitely think that his ceiling in the UFC is limited for sure. But against Rothwell, I just feel that he's going to be able to put out more volume, more activity. Obviously, there's a great puncher's chance on either side. These are two hard-hitting heavyweights. So if one of them falls, then I'm not going to be surprised. But I think this is a fight, and probably the first fight for quite a while, where we're going to see De Lima in a fight where it's going to be won and lost on the feet. And I think De Lima's live as an underdog.
This might be a weird take, but I feel as though it's really going to come down to De Lima's confidence in this fight, right? Like if he's confidently going out there and trying to say that he will out kickbox and outstrike Ben Rothwell without being put on his back foot the entire time, yeah, I absolutely understand that take. For me, it seems as though like, will he try to attack takedowns here? Even if he doesn't, and he's not successful in getting his game going, I feel like he's going to be the one on his back foot most times, and that is kind of more draining and taxing on your cardio. And I feel like that he will still slow down with Ben Rothwell kind of just pushing him back and kind of making him fight off of his back foot the entire time. What do you take of that approach?
I get it, but I don't think it's hard to. So say Ben Rothwell's moving forward, which he's a big heavy presence in there. So I do agree with you. He's going to have a lot of moments where he's the one on the front foot. But because of Rothwell's lack of movement, he's quite static. It's not going to be hard for somebody like De Lima. Just if he's getting backed up against the cage, just to find his exit, get back out, take the center of the cage. If Rothwell comes forward again, this is another thing with De Lima. He's got power moving backwards with his check hooks. He can throw leg kicks moving backwards. We saw that against I think it was Ben Sassoli. Now, obviously, a big difference between Rothwell and Sassoli, but Sassoli was actually a fast-moving, smaller heavyweight with much better movement than Rothwell. Very boxing heavy. De Lima handled him. And again, I know there's a difference from a skill perspective, but if Rothwell is aggressive here and he is always walking forwards, I think he's going to get hit on whilst De Lima's on the back foot. That could get the respect from Rothwell on De Lima, which will then allow De Lima to come forwards a little bit. But if not, I don't think Rothwell's movement is good enough to cut off the angles the De Lima can exit out of on the back foot, if that makes sense. So this is what I mean. I think stylistically, I think De Lima's actually got a sneaky good fight here. I don't think the betting lines are going to, right now with Ben Rothwell being minus 170, I don't think Rothwell's going to look like a minus 170 fighter in this fight, even if he does win. So yeah, like I say, I think De Lima's live.
All right. I like that take. And again, I always like, again, some disagreements and people kind of making cases for both sides. So I completely understand that take here for De Lima as well. All right, let's move on to the main event. And as I always do at this point in time, remind you guys, 130 live viewers that we currently have. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and show my guy Newsome some love as well by following him on Twitter. Link is in the description below. And then obviously check out the tape index, because what kind of job would I be doing if I don't plug in the fucking tape index with my guy Newsome here as well? So, all right. Main event time. Max Holloway finally coming back after his demolishment, whatever you want to call it, of Calvin Kattar back in January against another returning fighter in Yair Rodriguez, who we haven't seen since, I believe, October of 2019, where he was able to dispatch of Jeremy Stephens over a 15-minute fight. Momentum was definitely not on his side in that fight. We could definitely say that. I'll actually let you kick this one off. What are your thoughts on Max Holloway being a minus 600 favorite? Do you think it's warranted? And then ultimately, how do you see this fight playing out, and who gets the hand raise?
Man, Max Holloway with grown hair is a beast. So yeah, I'm picking Max. Over to you. No, listen, with that being said, I think I'm looking at the first line I can see on best fight odds is minus 720 for Max Holloway, but we'll say anything from like minus 600 to like minus 750. I think the line's nuts. Like, I'm definitely not picking against Max Holloway, but does he really go out there and look like a minus 700 favourite on the night? It's a tough one. It's one of them fights where I don't think you can bet the money line. I don't think you can bet Max Holloway at minus 600, minus 700, minus 750. But I also think you're probably going to be screwing up a betting ticket, a plus 500 betting ticket on Yair Rodriguez at the same time. So it's a tough one from that perspective. And then even from a prop perspective, does Holloway finish him? Does he not? Is it a fight where Holloway can't get that finish that Yair doesn't break? Don't think Yair is the type of fighter to break very easily. So maybe the fight does go longer. Probably the over 2.5 might be the way that you play this fight. From a betting perspective, it's really difficult. But for as for how the fight plays out, listen, like, can't look past what Holloway did to Calvin Kattar, man. I thought Calvin Kattar was a live underdog in that fight. I think I bet him as an underdog as well at like plus 150 or something like that. And I thought I was getting a really good line at plus 150, but man, like, Holloway not only demolished Kattar, but he beat Kattar in the area where I think I speak for the majority of people thought that Calvin Kattar was the best boxer in the division. I was the same. From a technical standpoint, Holloway just fucked him up from start to finish. There was a moment in that fight, I can't remember what round, where Kattar looked like he landed a hard shot, but aside from that, man, it was a brutal beatdown, and it was an eye opener as well, because there's only one fighter in the division that gives Holloway a fight, and that's the current champion, and Alexander Volkanovski. Outside of Volkanovski, I think if Holloway fought I love Volkanovski. I've won so much money on the dude's career. I bet him against Holloway as well. But I think if that Holloway turned up that fought Kattar, I think he takes the belt back. But again, it's one of those performances with Max Holloway. We know he's a phenomenal elite fighter, but was that an extra special elite performance that he's not going to be able to replicate again? Because what I saw in that Holloway fight, it's really hard to watch it and believe your eyes in what's happening. But if that Holloway turns up against Rodriguez, he's going to fuck him up. But I think the fight's going to be closer than the betting line suggests. Not so much closer. It's a tough fight to bet from a betting perspective. I think it's going to be interesting if Yair Rodriguez comes into this fight and starts throwing low kicks. I know I keep saying that, it seems to be the theme of this card, the theme of this podcast. But I think if Rodriguez comes in firing hard low kicks at Holloway, we've seen historically that one fight against Volkanovski where he managed to beat Holloway based on shutting his movement down due to leg kicks early on. If Rodriguez really starts hammering low kicks and stays on them, maybe he gives himself a really good chance to win this fight. But outside of that, Holloway's forward pressure and the fact that he can always keep the fight in boxing range where he's so fucking good, quick combinations, doesn't tire out. It's a difficult fight for Rodriguez. It's a difficult fight to bet. That's where I'm at with it. I think Holloway wins this fight. I don't think we're going to see a single serious analyst pick against Holloway. I'd be really interested to hear that take if he did. But yeah, Max Holloway to win, and it'll either be an elite performance or an ultra elite performance.
Yeah, for me, the most frustrating thing, like, I was on Kattar with you as well, right? I was on Kattar in that fight, and the frustrating thing about that fight is that, like, it was line minus 155, plus 135 with Kattar obviously being the dog. I believe that was like the closing odds, if I'm not mistaken. We've never seen a performance like that from Holloway outside of his beatdown of Brian Ortega, who had no striking at that point in time. So to think that he'd be able to do the same thing to a very solid striker, even still to this day, I would say Kattar is still the better technical striker. Maybe not the better MMA striker, but he's the better technical striker. And then just seeing the backlash that was getting, everybody who picked Kattar, getting the amount of backlash they were from just viewers and listeners and all that stuff saying, how could you pick against Max? Look what he just did. Not like you weren't even predicting that he'd be able to do that to Calvin Kattar, to fucking set striking records and breaking the history books and stuff. There's nobody in the world that was thinking that he'd be able to do something like that to that extent. No way. And again, all of us are going to look like dumbasses here with that Calvin Kattar ticket. But pre-fight, nothing indicated that at all, especially with the amount that we've seen Max Holloway get hit in the past. Look at his strikes absorbed amount, right? Like the guy just keeps getting hit, but he hits people more than they hit him. And that's what matters at the end of the day. He just has this God mode that he was able to achieve that night, in my opinion. But nothing like, again, the only other fight that I could think of where it's like he hit God mode was that Ortega fight, just because he had little to no resistance to have to deal with in terms of striking in that fight. In regards to this fight, though, it could look like the line is too wide for the first 2 rounds, because after that, that's where I think that Yair starts to deal poorly with the pressure that's going to be coming Max's way. I think Max will start to have him on the back foot, and then really just start raining those punches, trying to get that punch count up there, right? Like he's talking about trying to hit 900 strikes this weekend. Like that's otherworldly. That's absurd to think that he'd be able to hit that number. But to have that type of mentality, got to believe he'll be able to carry it out on a guy like Yair Rodriguez, who, in my opinion, just has a flash KO chance. That's really about it. If you're betting Yair, you think he has a chance to win this fight, bet him by KO, which I think is around plus 1,100, plus 900, depending on where you're looking at. Because if anything that we can say about Max Holloway's game is he gets hit too much sometimes. Like he gets hit just as much. His striking defense is not there, but luckily for him, his chin is elite, where he's able to take that damage and keep moving forward. We haven't seen the guy get knocked out yet. We haven't seen him in, like, I think the most trouble we saw him in, and credit to you, you picked Dustin Poirier in that fight. That's the most damage we've ever seen kind of dished out to him, and closest we've ever seen him to being finished. But since then, it's nothing, man. That nobody can touch this guy. I actually like Holloway inside the distance. Personally, I parlayed him at minus 500. When I saw that minus 500, I'm like, him, Thiago Moises, that's my lock of the night play right there. I got them both at minus 142 for that parlay. But yeah, he should be able to do work here. Just be cautious early. We know the unorthodox and flashy shit that Yair can do, but after that second round, I think it's going to be all downhill for Rodriguez. So I stabbed the round 3, round 4, round 5 props for a Holloway. I think those are good looks, but even him inside the distance, I think he gets it done within 4 rounds. I just don't think that Yair is going to be able to deal with that. I get that he went 24 minutes and 59 seconds against Chan Sung Jung back in there and was able to pull off that last second knockout. But I think that the pace of this fight is going to be much more than what he dealt with that fight with Korean Zombie, and I think he'll really start to feel it the later that this fight goes. So yeah, I like Holloway. I'm going to call it 4th round KO. It seems like you got something to add here. Please do.
Yeah, there's something with Holloway, and you can take this, however you want. But there's something with Holloway that I can't quite put my finger on, because, like you said, pre-tape before the Cates fight, he just. There wasn't a singular performance where he just looked like he was on fast forward. He just had he had an extra bit of everything, and he was saying that he wasn't training effectively, or he wasn't sparring. And then even something I thought of today at the weigh-ins, like, how fucking good did Max Holloway look at the weigh-ins? He was something I always notice as well. Just something to watch out for when a fighter's had a bad cut. And the weighed in and the flexing, they try and flex on the scales. If you can see a fighter tense their arms up, and you can see the definition of the bicep and the veins and stuff like that, a fighter that's had a bad weight cut will struggle to tense up and flex the body properly. Max Holloway completely and utterly flexing, looked fucking great. Listen, it wasn't that many years ago that we were all questioning Max Holloway's got to move up the lightweight, and he was having these death weight cuts. Suddenly the weight cuts are fucking phenomenal. His performance are looking better than we've ever seen. That performance from Holloway against Kattar, in my opinion, is probably the best performance I've seen from a fighter in the UFC. It was fucking insane. There's something with all. I don't know what he's done, what he's changed up. Something, man. I'm really interested to see what he looks like against Rodriguez, because the vibes that I got from the weigh-in is that he's fucking ready to put on that same performance again. So I don't know. There's something, I can't put my finger on it, man. But there's something with Holloway. He just seems to have just like added like 50% across the board on everything, on his physical attributes, his skill set, his weight cuts. Just there's something, man.
I like that you brought up like that single fight performance that really stands out to you. I absolutely agree with you. That Holloway Kidder performance is probably one of the best we've seen. Another one that kind of comes to mind is this is for the older heads. People have been around like pre-Conor era. TJ Dillashaw against Renan Barão 1. Like that, especially as a plus 400 underdog, right? Like he's a massive underdog in that fight, and he comes out, just beats Barão pillar to post. Absolutely crazy fight there. Shout out to my guy Justin T here saying EPO ... LOL. Maybe.
No, I was about to say, wasn't TJ juiced in that fight as well?
Well, I think he was talking about
not me. You said it.
I think he's talking about Max right now. I think that's what he's kind of referring to right now. I'm not going to lay out those accusations. Max doesn't seem like a guy that would do it, but when you have millions of dollars on the line whenever you go out there and fight, maybe you might want to have as much of an advantage as you want there. But yeah, I think pretty much everybody is in agreement here. Yair early KO, or Max Holloway just continues to dominate him throughout the 25-minute mark. I don't think it's going to take 25 minutes. I think he gets him out of there within 20. So we very much looking forward to that. All right. That is a wrap on the breakdowns, but we will drop you guys our most confident bet of the card. I don't like calling it a lock of the night play for my guests, because obviously I know a lot of them hate that word, that L word, so I won't say for them. That's why I always say either lock of the night or most confident play of the night. So for myself, obviously branded lock of the night, my lock of the night play is going to be I parlayed Max Holloway at minus 500 with Thiago Moises at minus 236. This was the number that I got him at. And those final parlay odds are minus 142. I got 4 units on that. Newsome, what is your most confident play on the card?
Yeah, well, I would call it more of a best bet. But I would go with Song Yadong. I think the line's too short. So from a best bet perspective, I feel the line should be much wider in this fight. I feel that stylistically, he's going to be a problem in every single aspect of mixed martial arts against Julio Arce. Like I've said in the breakdown, I love Julio Arce. I think he's a solid fighter himself, but styles make fights. And I think that Song Yadong has every single part of his style, his skill set, his attributes to really, really make himself look great against Julio Arce. And if I'm right in the way I'm seeing this fight, then there's no way Song Yadong looks like a minus 135 favorite in that spot. I think the line should be wider. So yeah, Song Yadong for me is the best bet.
There you guys go. Newsome, truly appreciate you spending this time with us. I believe it's 10:30 your time. So I didn't make you stay up. Man. Yeah,
I'm going to play some Call of Duty.
There you go. So at least I'm not keeping you up till 4 a.m. talking about fucking Leah Letson against Felicia Spencer. Anything you want to say on the back end here before I let you out of here, brother?
Yeah, like I say, just thanks for having me on. I'll always come on. Time given enough notice, and if I've got no other plans surrounding the night and the time and stuff like that. So thank you for having me on. And again, follow me on Twitter, like you said, Locke. I think everything's in the description below anyway. But follow me on Twitter if you want to chat fights. If you want to come and check out MMA Play 365, that's MMAplay365.com. Plenty going on there, including the tape index, which we've plugged a million times already. You're not a real handicapper if you don't use the tape index. Do you cap, bro? Do you even cap, bro? You should get it on a t-shirt maybe. But no, yeah, you want to follow me on Twitter, MMA Play 365 for everything that I've got going on from my betting perspective. And like I say, look, once again, thank you for having me on, and we'll do it again shortly.
Absolutely, Newsome. I think we're onto something right there with the "Do you even cap, bro" shirt with a tape index logo or something like that. We got to get that up on the MMA Play 365 website ASAP, because I would happily rock that, and I'm sure a bunch of other people would as well. So maybe that's something to put into the bank and think about a little bit later. But yeah, no, obviously very happy to have you on. Again, you're probably the one guy that I talk to most about MMA and all that stuff. I don't, mingled too much with too many other people as much anymore, but you're definitely one of those guys that I know will always have my back no matter what, and the feeling is reciprocated as well. So yeah, there you guys have it. UFC Vegas 42, Holloway Yair. We might see murder this weekend. Who knows? I can't wait. But one thing is for sure, early start time. Don't get caught napping. 2 p.m. Eastern is when the first fight kicks off on the prelims. 11 fight slate. I believe the main card kicks off at 4 p.m. as well. So yeah, don't get caught napping. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. Again, hit that like, hit that subscribe if you support your boy. Check out my guy Newsome on Twitter as well, Newsome_MMA. Obviously, check out the TapeNX MMA Play 365, all that good stuff. We will see you guys next week. I have a pretty good guest lined up for the Ultimate Weight Show next week. Don't want to reveal it yet. I will talk about it early next week, but got plenty of good content coming your way. Sorry, last thing I want to say before we get out of here. Next week is the last card of consecutive events. We do have the November 30th weekend off, so don't be like, oh my god, no UFC. I'm giving you guys the heads up now. All right. Good luck on your best this weekend, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern for the Fight Day live chat. Fight Day live chat. All questions, comments, and concerns for the chat. See you guys then, 11 a.m. Eastern. Thiago Moises. I'm gonna go with Thiago Moises. I want to give him as much as my positive energy as possible. See you guys tomorrow.